if everything you've ever been told about the birth of human society is not merely incomplete, but entirely inverted, imagine a truth so unsettling that it turns the accepted timeline of history on its head. That we are not the architects of civilization's first great dawn, rather the inheritors of its latest flicker. Survivors sifting through the ashes of worlds long forgotten. Before the rise of the river valleys we call cradle civilizations, before the ziggurats of Sumer, before the pyramids of Giza, entire cultures may have flourished in brilliance, only to vanish beneath flood, fire, or ice. Their monuments, now weathered and silent, were not foundations for the future, but tombstones for a past erased. Their myths, dismissed for centuries as mere folklore, might in fact be fragmented memories of real cataclysms that drowned empires older than written language itself. Is not the history taught in classrooms. It is the story buried beneath layers of sediment, encoded in stone, whispered through ancestral chants, preserved in the quiet spaces between official narratives. Tonight, beyond the textbook, and into the shadows where anomalies gather, where the earth itself seems to hold its breath for someone to ask the right questions. Picture a mirror falling onto stone. It does not vanish, it shatters, as of sharp fragments scatter across the floor, each reflecting a sliver of the original image, distorted, incomplete, yet undeniably part of a greater whole. Is how human history truly appears when we dare to look closer than conventional accounts allow. We are taught a tidy, linear progression. Nomadic hunters, early farmers, walled cities, key empires, modernity. A comforting ladder of progress, each rung built upon the last. What if this ladder is an illusion? What if our past is not a single staircase, but a mosaic of shattered mirrors? Some shards lost beneath oceans, buried under jungle canopies, still others woven into myths, so ancient they feel like dreams. In standard curricula, the story of complex society begins only 6,000 years ago. That's when writing, agriculture, monumental architecture supposedly emerged together in Mesopotamia and the Nile Valley. Before that, endless expanse of time inhabited by scattered bands of foragers, huddled around fires, shaping tools from bone and flint, their lives defined by survival alone. Yet even a cursory glance at the archaeological record reveals fractures in this smooth narrative. Across continents, we find ruins that defy chronology, precision-carved megaliths older than farming, submerged cities beneath shallow seas, ceremonial sites aligned with stars that suggest astronomical knowledge far beyond primitive capability. Consider a span of 12,000 years. Stretch of time reaches back before the wheel, before domesticated wheat, before the first city walls rose from the dust. And yet, within that era, hands-carved stone monuments of staggering sophistication. Structures alive with celestial patterns, animal iconography, geometric precision that imply vision, coordination, and cultural depth. If these people were truly simple wanderers, why did they build temples? Did they map the heavens? Why did they gather in the thousands to erect circles of stone on windswept plateaus, far from fertile land or permanent water? Perhaps the truth is this civilization did not emerge from necessity alone, but from inspiration. From a desire to connect with something greater than oneself, from rituals so powerful they compelled scattered groups to cooperate, settle, and eventually cultivate the land. Not because they needed to, because they chose to stay near sacred ground. This possibility gains weight when we turn to myth. The shores of the Mediterranean to the islands of the Pacific, from the high deserts of the Americas to the riverbanks of India, nearly every culture tells of a golden age lost to flood or fire. Plato's Atlantis, the Hindu tales of Marrakech, the luminous harbor, cities swallowed by the sea, Aboriginal dreamtime stories of coastlines now drowned, native traditions of sky, born teachers who vanished when the waters rose. Scholars often label these as allegory, universal symbols of human anxiety. But what if they are something more? What if they are shards of collective memory, in story when stone and parchment were destroyed? After all, myth is often the last vessel to survive a collapse. When libraries burn and cities sink, travel in the mouths of survivors. If advanced societies existed before the accepted dawn of history, where are their traces? Lies in the fragility of memory itself. Wood rots. Metal corrodes. Stone crumbles. Entire coastlines have vanished since the end of the last glacial age. Beneath rising seas, forests reclaim cities within centuries. Witness Angkor Machu Picchu or the Mayan lowlands. Catastrophes, volcanic eruptions, seismic upheavals can erase a thriving culture in a single generation. Thus, the absence of evidence is not proof of absence. It is a testament to time's relentless erasure. And so we must ask, what if advanced does not mean satellites and microchips, but mastery of stone, sky, sea? What if ancient mariners crossed oceans when textbooks claim they clung to riverbanks? What if their temples were observatories, their myths encoded star charts, and their disappearance the result not of ignorance, but of forces beyond any civilization's control? Now begin our journey through these echoes, through ruins that challenge dogma, through stories that refuse to die, through stones that stand as silent witnesses to a past far stranger than we've been led to believe. Our first stop lies in the highlands of southeastern Anatolia, on a gentle rise once known to shepherds as Potbelly Hill. For centuries, appeared unremarkable. A grassy mound grazed by sheep beneath open skies. Beneath its surface lay a secret so profound it would force historians to rewrite the human story. This is Stonehaven Rise, a temple older than farming, older than pottery, older than the written word. Carbon dating places its construction around 9,600 years before the present era. 12,000 years ago by modern reckoning. That makes it over 7,000 years older than Stonehenge and 8,000 years older than the Great Pyramids. Here, T-shaped pillars, some weighing 16 tons, stand in concentric rings carved with lions, vultures, scorpions, serpents rendered with astonishing artistry. These are not crude doodles. They are deliberate compositions with flint tools by hands that understood anatomy, motion, and symbolism. Most astonishing of all, Stonehaven Rise was built not by farmers, by hunter-gatherers, people supposedly too preoccupied with daily survival to organize large-scale labor. Yet here they gathered, perhaps from hundreds of miles away, to quarry, transport, and erect these megaliths with astronomical alignments that track solstices and equinoxes. Even more mysterious, around 10,000 years ago, the site was deliberately buried. Tons of earth and rubble were piled over the pillars, in silence. This was no accident of erosion. It was a ritual act, perhaps an act of reverence, a response to climate collapse during the Younger Dryas period, when sudden cold and drought shattered ecosystems across the northern hemisphere. Burying Stonehaven Rise, its builders preserved it. When archaeologists uncovered it in the 1990s, the carvings were as sharp as the day they were made. A time capsule from a forgotten world. Walking among these stones today feels the weight of unanswered questions. How did they move 16-ton pillars without wheels or draft animals? How did they coordinate hundreds of workers across seasonal migrations? And most importantly, what belief system inspired such devotion? Stonehaven Rise was not the beginning of civilization, but a relic of something older, something lost. A temple this complex could vanish beneath soil for 10 millennia. How many others remain hidden? From these windswept hills leads east, to the mist-shrouded slopes of Java, where another enigma sleeps beneath volcanic soil. Locals call it Gunung Cahaya, the mountain of light, thought to be a natural hill. Modern scans reveal chambers, corridors, and terraces descending deep into the earth. Core samples suggest human activity as far back as 20,000 years. Deep in the last ice age, mainstream history insists humanity lived only in small, scattered bands. If confirmed, Gunung Cahaya would be the oldest pyramid-like structure on Earth. Controversy swirls. Critics question the dating methods. A journal retracted an early study, citing methodological concerns. Yet the radar anomalies remain: geometric voids, worked stone fragments, and terraces aligned with celestial events from epochs long past. Whether or not Gunung Cahaya is a buried pyramid forces us to confront a deeper truth: the earth conceals more than it reveals. Hills may be tombs, mounds may be monuments, and the ocean, silent, vast, largely unexplored, guards entire worlds beneath its waves. Beneath the emerald canopy of West Java, clings to volcanic slopes, and the air hums with the song of unseen creatures. rises a hill unlike any other. To the untrained eye, appears natural. A gentle swell in the landscape, terraced by time and rain. But to those who listen closely, the earth speaks. And what it whispers is this: something immense lies buried here, older than memory, older than the wheel, older even than the first seeds ever sown, is Gunung Kahaya, the mountain of light. For generations, local villagers have treated this place with reverence. Elders tell of strange echoes that rise from its core at dawn, of stones that vibrate when struck in certain sequences, dreams in which ancestors walk through corridors carved deep within the hill. These were dismissed as folklore, until science began to listen. In the thousands, a team of Indonesian researchers, led by geologist Dr. Arman Wijaya, deployed ground-penetrating radar and seismic tomography to peer beneath the surface without disturbing a single blade of grass. What they found defied expectation. Far below the visible terraces lay a labyrinth of chambers, walls, and passageways arranged with geometric precision. Core samples extracted from depths exceeding 30 meters revealed fragments of worked basalt bound together by a substance resembling ancient concrete. Long before concrete was thought to exist. Even more astonishing were the dates. Radiocarbon analysis of organic material embedded deep within the structure yielded results that spanned from 10,000 to 20,000 years ago. Accurate would place the earliest phases of Gunung Kahaya's construction deep within the last ice age, when mainstream history insists humanity lived only in scattered bands of nomadic foragers, surviving on what they could hunt or gather. Yet here, in the heart of Southeast Asia, someone was quarrying stone, shaping terraces, building subterranean halls on a monumental scale. Critics were swift to respond. They questioned the integrity of the samples, suggesting that older carbon could have seeped into the layers from natural sources. Scientific journal that initially published the team's findings later retracted the paper, citing methodological concerns. To many archaeologists, Kahaya remains an enigma wrapped in controversy. A sight too extraordinary to accept, yet too compelling to ignore. But retractions do not erase anomalies. The radar scans still show symmetrical voids. The core samples still contain angular stone fragments that bear the marks of human hands. The surface terraces, lined with massive basalt columns, some over 10 feet in length, still align with celestial events, as they appeared thousands of years ago, might have driven such ambition in an age we call primitive. Some researchers propose that Gunung Kahaya was a ceremonial center, inner chambers designed to amplify sound in ways that altered human consciousness. Acoustic tests have confirmed that certain frequencies resonate through the structure with uncanny clarity, though the builders understood the physics of vibration long before modern science gave it a name. Link the site to oral traditions of a lost land. Valeria, a luminous realm said to have spanned the Indian Ocean before vanishing beneath the waves. Geology offers no evidence of such a continent. The myth persists across island cultures, carried in chants and star lore. Perhaps Gunung Kahaya is not a remnant of Valeria, but a memory of it. A sacred echo built by survivors who sought to anchor their knowledge in stone. Regardless of its origin, Gunung Kahaya forces us to confront a humbling truth: the earth conceals far more than it reveals. Hills may be tombs, may be monuments. And what appears natural may in fact be the deliberate work of minds we have underestimated. Time is not a preserver. It is a veil. Swallow cities. Volcanoes bury villages. And seas, rising steadily since the end of the last glacial age, drowned entire coastlines that once teemed with life. If advanced societies flourished along those shores, their ruins now sleep beneath hundreds of feet of water, invisible to all but the most determined explorers. And so our journey turns from earth to ocean. The restless waves of the Mediterranean. Off the coast of modern-day Israel lies a village frozen in time. Its stone houses, hearths, burial sites rest on the seabed, perfectly preserved under a blanket of silt. Is Havenbrook? A Neolithic settlement submerged nearly 9,000 years ago, when rising seas claimed the land. Divers have walked its streets, brushing sand from grinding stones, flint tools, and the bones of domesticated sheep and goats. The center of the village stands a circle of 7 megaliths surrounding what was once a freshwater spring. A design that echoes sacred geometries, found from Anatolia to the British Isles. Carbon dating places Havenbrook's final days around the same era as the construction of Stonehaven Rise, suggesting that complex, settled life existed far earlier and more widely than textbooks acknowledge. Further east, in the azure waters near the western coast of India, surveys have uncovered something even more profound. Beneath the Gulf of Kamat lie the outlines of walls, steps, geometric patterns stretching for miles. Structures that some researchers believe belong to the legendary harbor, city of Marrakech. Sanskrit texts describe Marrakech as a luminous metropolis of golden spires and bustling docks, by a wise and just sovereign whose name has faded into myth. According to the epics, the city was swallowed by the sea in a single night of fury, people vanishing beneath the waves. For centuries, scholars dismissed this as poetic allegory. But now, dredged stone fragments from the Sebed have been dated to over 9,000 years ago, while debate continues over whether these ruins are truly the Marrakech of legend. Their very existence blurs the line between story and substance. Could it be that the great epics of antiquity are not flights of fancy, but fragmented records of real places, real people, and real catastrophes? The Aegean Sea, off the southern coast of Greece, lies another submerged world, Elionis. Unlike many underwater sites reduced to rubble, remains astonishingly intact. Its streets intersect at precise right angles. Courtyards open into plazas paved with limestone, sophisticated drainage system channels, rainwater through channels carved into bedrock. It is as though the city was sealed in a moment of time, preserved beneath the waves like a message in a bottle. Dates to roughly 5,000 years ago. Well within the accepted timeline of Bronze Age civilization, yet its completeness suggests that countless other settlements, older and more enigmatic, may still lie hidden beneath unexplored seabeds. After all, than 5% of the ocean floor has been mapped in detail. The rest remains a vast, silent archive. Perhaps the most debated of all underwater sites lies off the southern coast of Okinawa, Japan. Discovered in the 1980s by a local diver, reformation descends in massive terraces, with broad platforms, right-angled steps, and channels that appear deliberately carved. Geologists argue it is a natural formation shaped by tectonic fractures and ocean currents. Others point to sharp edges, tool-like grooves, alignments with solstice sunrises, as evidence of human involvement. Shun Roi is indeed man-made, and if its upper terraces date to over 10,000 years ago, some researchers propose, it would stand among the oldest monumental structures on Earth. A testament to a coastal civilization, erased not by war or neglect, by the slow, inevitable rise of the sea. These drowned cities share a common thread. They flourished during or shortly after the end of the last ice age. Global temperatures warmed and glaciers melted at an unprecedented rate. Over the course of just a few centuries, sea levels rose by more than 400 feet. Coastlines that had supported human life for millennia vanished beneath the waves. And with them, perhaps, cultures skilled in navigation, architecture, and agriculture were lost. This is where myth and geology converge. Narratives appear in nearly every ancient tradition. The Sumerians told of Zusodra, who built a vessel to survive a deluge sent by the gods. The Hebrew Bible recounts Noah's Ark. Hindu scriptures speak of Manu, guided to safety by a divine fish. Aboriginal Australians describe ancestral lands now submerged beneath the Timor Sea. Native tribes of the Pacific Northwest tell of a great wave that swept away villages and reshaped the world. These stories are too consistent, too widespread, to be mere coincidence. They read like collective trauma encoded in narrative. A warning passed down through generations. The sea remembers. And it rises. Havenbrook, Marrakech, Elionis, and Shun. Are only the fragments we have found. How many more lie hidden beneath the uncharted depths? Each discovery suggests that the cradle of civilization may not have been inland river valleys alone, but also the fertile, resource-rich coastlines that are now lost to the ocean. And if that is true, then our understanding of human history is built on incomplete ground. Literally, from the silence of the deep, we return once more to the solidity of stone. For if sunken cities remind us of fragility, The megaliths that crown mountains and plains speak of endurance. They stand not as ruins, but as challenges, daring us to explain how they came to be. In the Bekaa Valley of Lebanon, where the sun sets in a blaze of amber and violet, rise the ruins of a city once called Ashtar-Kad, the citadel of the sun. Roman-era temples lies a foundation, unlike any other, 3 colossal limestone blocks, each over 65 feet long and weighing close to 800 tons. Known as the Trian stones, they fit together with such precision that not even a sheet of paper could slide between them. And in a nearby quarry lies an even greater mystery, the stone of the first breath, partially carved from bedrock, estimated to weigh over 1,200 tons. To put this in perspective, the largest stone ever moved by modern engineering, the Thunderstone in St. Petersburg, weighs around 1,500 tons, required an army of laborers, rails, and hydraulic jacks over months to transport. Yet the builders of Ashtar-Kad accomplished their feats thousands of years ago, without wheels, without steel, without engines. How? Inscriptions make no mention of moving such stones. Their own architecture, impressive as it was, pales in comparison. The Trian stones seem to belong to an earlier age, to a people whose methods have vanished like smoke on the wind. Across the world, Andes above Cusco, Peru, another fortress defies explanation. Cervantes rises in jagged tiers, its walls built from andesite blocks, some exceeding 100 tons. Each stone is cut into irregular polygons, yet they interlock with such perfection that no mortar is needed, that have reduced modern cities to rubble leave Cervantes untouched, its joints flexing like the sinews of a living body. Further south, Wept Altiplano of Bolivia, lies Taka Ve, part of an ancient complex once known as Tiwanaku. Here, the mystery sharpens into near impossibility. Of red sandstone and andesite lie scattered, their surfaces polished to mirror, like smoothness, their edges razor sharp. Intricate grooves, drill holes, interlocking joints suggest a modular design, as though the builder's mass-produced components for assembly. Some stones display perfect, right angles and channels so precise they resemble machine-milled parts. Tarka Ve dates back at least 1,500 years, and some researchers argue its origins may stretch much further into the past. Mainstream archaeology attributes these wonders to patient skill and simple tools, pounding stones, sand abrasion, wooden sledges. Experimental reconstructions have shown that, in theory, such methods could work, given decades of labor and thousands of workers. But why go to such extremes? Why carve a 12-sided block with angles matching its neighbors to within a fraction of a millimeter? Why transport stones heavier than buses across steep terrain at elevations over 12,000 feet? The answer may lie not in brute force, but in lost knowledge. Legends from Tibet speak of monks using harmonic chants to levitate stones. Ancient Egyptian texts hint at the voice that moves mountains. Modern physics confirms that acoustic resonance can suspend small objects in midair. Could ancient builders have harnessed sound on a massive scale, using vibration to reduce the effective weight of stone? Other theories propose chemical techniques, plant-based solvents or mineral pastes that temporarily softened rock, allowing it to be shaped like clay before hardening again. Or perhaps they understood geomagnetism, aligning stones with Earth's magnetic field to aid in movement. We may never know for certain, but the stones themselves remain undeniable, unyielding, utterly precise. They are not theories. They are facts, and they ask a simple question. What if we have forgotten more than we remember? The hush between sunset and stars, when the world softens into shadow, stories awaken, the kind printed in books or etched in stone, but those carried in breath, in rhythm, in the quiet spaces between generations. These are the oldest libraries humanity has ever known, and within them may lie the last echoes of civilizations that vanished not with a roar, with a sigh, swallowed by flood, fire, or time itself. Legends of lost lands shimmer across cultures like reflections on water. In the west, they speak of Thalasar, a radiant island empire beyond the pillars of Heracles, rich in knowledge and power. Hubris drew the wrath of the heavens, and the sea claimed it in a single night. In esoteric traditions of the East, whispers tell of Valeria, a luminous continent in the Indian Ocean. To beings of light, who walked in harmony with cosmic forces before cataclysm, scattered their wisdom like ash on the wind. And across the vast Pacific does recount Ontario, a great land of navigators and star readers, whose cities now sleep beneath coral and current. Scholarship often relegates these tales to the realm of allegory, moral fables, or poetic metaphors. Yet their persistence across continents, separated by oceans and millennia, defies simple coincidence. Could it be that these myths are not inventions, but inheritances, fragments of memory preserved when stone crumbled and scrolls turned to dust? The story of Thalasar originates not in fantasy, but in philosophy. 2,400 years ago, the Greek thinker Plato described it in his dialogues, Timaeus and Critias. He presented it as a cautionary tale, a once great civilization that fell to arrogance and divine retribution. But crucially, claimed the account came from Egyptian priests, who told of records far older than Greece itself. Your people, they allegedly said, remember only one flood, remember many. Plato placed the fall of Thalasar precisely 11,600 years ago, remarkably close to the end of the cold fracture and violent climate reversal that gripped the earth at the close of the last ice age. Coincidence? Or a thread of truth woven into myth? For centuries, seekers have scoured the globe for Thalasar, suggesting sites from the Azores to the Black Sea, from Antarctica to the Caribbean. No definitive proof has emerged, yet the power of the story endures, not because it names a place, but because it names a possibility, that brilliance can vanish, that knowledge is fragile, even the mightiest can be humbled by forces beyond their control. Valeria, though less documented in classical texts, vividly in oral traditions across South and Southeast Asia. In some versions, its people communicated through thought, built cities of crystal and light, understood the music of the spheres. Their downfall came not from war, from a celestial disturbance, a comet's passage that ignited the skies and cracked the earth. Modern geology offers no evidence of a sunken continent in the Indian Ocean. Tectonics confirms the ocean floor is too young to have supported such a landmass. And yet, the myth persists. Valeria was never a physical continent, but a cultural memory. A golden age of seafaring, astronomy, spiritual unity that flourished along now drowned coastlines. When the seas rose, the centers of that world vanished, only stories carried inland by survivors. Similarly, Ontario may not have been a single land, a network of island kingdoms stretching across the Pacific, linked by voyagers who read the stars, winds, and swells with uncanny precision. Polynesian chants still encode navigational data accurate enough to guide canoes across thousands of miles of open ocean. Easter Island's moai, stone cities of Nan Madol, and the terraced formations of Shun, Rai all hint at a shared heritage of monumental construction and celestial alignment. These be the scattered children of Ontario. Not a lost continent, but a lost civilization of oceanic unity. Its memory preserved in stone, song, geometry. What unites Thalasar, Valeria, and Ontario is not geography, but trauma. Each tale centers on a world-ending event, flood, fire. And this, too, finds echoes in science. Around 12,800 years ago, as the great ice sheets of the northern hemisphere began to retreat, the planet was struck by a sudden and brutal reversal. Temperatures plummeted. Forests died, vanished. Human populations, already adapting to a warming world, were thrust into chaos. This period, known to geologists as the Cold Fracture, over 1,000 years before the climate stabilized once more. Mainstream science attributes this shift to disruptions in ocean currents, triggered by glacial meltwater flooding into the North Atlantic. But another hypothesis, the impact theory, suggests a more dramatic cause, fragments of a disintegrating comet striking the Earth. Evidence for this lies in a mysterious layer of sediment found across North America, Europe, parts of South America. Dubbed the black mat, it contains microscopic spheres of melted rock, nanodiamonds forged under extreme heat, elevated levels of platinum, signatures consistent with cosmic impacts. If true, the cold fracture was not merely a climate event, but a planetary emergency. Imagine the sky splitting open, raining from the heavens, forests ablaze, ash blotting out the sun for months, survivors huddled in caves, watching their world collapse into cold and darkness. In such a moment, myth is born, not as fiction, but as testimony. At Stonehenge Rise, just after this cataclysm, some researchers see a celestial record etched in stone. Carvings of vultures, scorpions, headless figures may not be random symbols, but a star map marking the moment the heavens fell. If so, the temple is not only a place of worship. It is a warning, preserved in limestone. The timing is uncanny. The cold fracture ended. Around 11,600 years ago, the planet warmed rapidly. Sea levels surged in what geologists call meltwater pulse 1b, drowning coastlines at a rate of several feet per generation. To communities living near the shore, this would have felt like the sea itself was rising to claim them. And so the flood myths began. From the Sumerian tale of Zusudra to the Hebrew story of Noah, from the Hindu legend of Manu guided by a divine fish to aboriginal accounts of ancestral lands now beneath the Timor Sea. The refrain is the same: the world drowned. A few survived. These are not merely religious parables. They are cultural fossils. Preserved trauma encoded in narrative. Writing did not exist. Story was the archive. And the archive remembered the flood. Consider the submerged ruins we've already encountered. Off Israel, Marrakech in the Gulf of Kamat, Elionis in Greece, Shunru near Okinawa, lies beneath waters that were dry land during or just after the cold fracture. Each suggests that complex, settled life existed along coastlines now lost. Entire societies thrived in those zones. And if they possessed knowledge of astronomy, architecture, seafaring, their disappearance would have been catastrophic. Not just physically, but culturally. Libraries of oral tradition, star maps, astral calendars, all swept away in a geological instant. What remained were fragments. A temple buried on a hilltop, a circle of megaliths on a drowned plain. A chant passed down through generations: beware the rising sea. Remember the lost ones. This is the true power of myth. It is not fantasy. It is memory wearing the mask of symbol. And yet, to embrace these stories uncritically is to risk illusion. May never have existed as Plato described it. Valeria may be a poetic ideal. Ontaria may be a composite of many cultures. Dismissing them entirely is to ignore their resilience, their uncanny alignment with geological and archaeological anomalies. Perhaps the truth lies in the space between. Not in literal sunken continents, in real civilizations erased by rising seas. Civilizations whose sophistication we have underestimated, because their ruins lie beneath unexplored ocean floors. After all, we have mapped less than 5% of the seabed in detail. The rest remains a silent archive, waiting. As the cold fracture ended and the seas rose, survivors faced a choice: rebuild or wander. Some chose to stay near sacred sites, domesticating plants and animals to sustain their communities, perhaps giving rise to agriculture not out of necessity, but out of devotion. Carried their knowledge inland, encoding it in myth, ritual, and stone. From this crucible emerged the world we know. The embers of what came before never fully died. They flicker in the precision of Ashtar, Cad's megaliths, echo in the earthquake, resistant joints of Corvantis. They hum in the geometric perfection of Tarka, vase modular stones. They whisper in the chants of elders who speak of lands that sank when the stars fell. This is not nostalgia. It is recognition. The human mind has not changed in 50,000 years. The same intelligence that built particle accelerators, once carved constellations into limestone, is not capacity but continuity. Civilization may not be a straight line upward, but a spiral. Rising, collapsing, rising again. Cycle carrying fragments of the last. What we call primitive may simply be humanity after a reset. Rebuilding from ashes with the same fire, fewer tools. And this brings us to a sobering reflection: our own age is no more immune to collapse than those that came before. Climate change, depletion, geopolitical instability. These are not abstract threats. They are the same forces that may have erased Thalasar, Valeria, or Ontaria. Stones of the past do not mock us, they mirror us. They ask, will your legacy endure? Or will it, too, become myth? A story told by survivors huddled around a fire, trying to remember what was lost. Questions stir something within you. If the silence between the stars feels suddenly full of voices, consider sharing your thoughts below. for validation, but for connection. For in sharing, we keep the chain of memory unbroken. From the myths of drowned worlds, now turn to the tools that may have built them. For if ancient peoples achieved such mastery of stone and sky, how did they do it? Their methods merely patient and ingenious? Or did they possess knowledge now lost to us, like a language with no speakers? Standing before the ruins of Tarka, one is struck not only by scale, but by silence. The stones do not boast. They simply are, polished to mirror smoothness, with edges so sharp they could draw blood, fitted with grooves and sockets that suggest a modular design. How did hands armed only with stone and bone achieve what modern engineers replicate only with diamond-tipped saws and computer-guided lasers? Question echoes across every megalithic site on Earth. It is not born of mysticism, but of honest bewilderment. The precision is undeniable. The tools, far as we know, were primitive. And yet the result defies the gap between means and outcome. Mainstream archaeology offers a compelling answer, and collective will. Given enough generations, enough laborers, and enough patience, even the hardest stone yields. Experimental reconstructions have shown that pounding with diorite balls, abrading with quartz sand, and drilling with hollow reeds tipped with emery can, in theory, shape granite. But theory and practice are not the same. To carve a 12-sided andesite block at Cervantes, each face angled to match its neighbors, within a fraction of a degree, haul it uphill at 12,000 feet above sea level. This is not merely difficult. It is a feat that strains credulity. And so, alternative possibilities arise, not as dogma, but as questions worth asking. What if ancient builders understood principles of physics we have forgotten? From Tibet speak of monks arranging drums and horns in precise arcs, chanting in harmonic unison, until massive stones rose into the air and floated to their appointed places. Modern acoustics confirms that sound waves can levitate small objects through resonant frequencies. Could a civilization with deep knowledge of vibration have scaled this phenomenon? Not with magic, but with applied science. In Egypt, inscriptions describe the voice that moves mountains. In Sanskrit texts, the Vaimanika Shastra, though controversial and likely modern in its current form, references aerial vehicles powered by sound and mercury vortexes. Such texts are often dismissed as fantasy. They may preserve distorted echoes of real acoustic or energetic technologies. There is the possibility of geopolymer science, the idea that some ancient stones were not carved, but cast. In the 1980s, materials scientist Joseph Davidovits proposed that the blocks of the Egyptian pyramids were made from a form of reconstituted limestone, like concrete into molds. Microscopic analysis revealed air bubbles and organic fibers inconsistent with natural stone, yet consistent with a man-made composite. If true, this would explain the seamless joints at Ashtar-Kad, the uniform texture of Tarka, Vase red sandstone, the near-perfect flatness of surfaces that show no tool marks. A geopolymer technique, using natron lime-based binders, could have allowed builders to grow stone on site, eliminating the need to transport colossal blocks. Critics argue that most megaliths are clearly quarried, not cast. And indeed, many show tool marks, fracture lines, and mineral compositions matching local bedrock. Perhaps both methods existed, some stones carved, others cast. Depending on purpose and location, the loss of such knowledge during a global collapse, like the cold fracture, would leave behind only the products, not the process. Another frontier lies in chemistry. Certain plants in the Andes produce acidic compounds capable of softening volcanic rock. Indigenous traditions speak of stone-eating vines and water that bites stone. Could ancient artisans have used organic solvents to temporarily plasticize rock, shaping it like clay before it hardened again? No residue remains after 12,000 years. But absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. Magnetism. Many megalithic sites align not only with celestial bodies, but with Earth's magnetic field. At Stonehaven Rise, the central pillars are oriented toward magnetic north, as it existed in the 9th millennium before the present era. At Gunung Padang, columns resonate like tuning forks when struck, suggesting an intentional use of lithophonic properties. What if builders selected stones not just for size, for their crystalline structure, knowing that certain rocks respond to vibration, heat, or electromagnetic fields. They have used the Earth's own energy as a tool. These ideas remain speculative. Yet the stones themselves demand speculation. They are too precise, too massive, too widespread to be explained by primitive effort alone. Perhaps the true lost technology was not a machine, a worldview, a holistic understanding in which engineering, astronomy, acoustics, and ritual were inseparable. To the builders of Corvantis, may not have been inert matter, but a living medium, responsive to intention, rhythm, and cosmic alignment. Their tools may have included chants, charts, and seasonal timing as much as hammers and chisels. This integrated knowledge, passed down orally, vanished in a single generation if catastrophe struck, leaving only silent monuments as testament. And vanish it did. Cold fracture. That sudden plunge into cold 12,800 years ago was more than a climate event. It was a cultural reset. Societies had risen along fertile coastlines, they were drowned. If they relied on stable seasons for agriculture, they starved. Their knowledge was stored in perishable forms, wood, fiber, memory. It turned to dust. What survived were the most durable things: stone, myth, fragments of technique, embedded in ritual. This brings us to a deeper realization. The similarities between megalithic sites across continents may not be coincidence, but inheritance. Consider the parallels. Cad in Lebanon and Corvantis in Peru. Both feature polygonal masonry, with interlocking joints that flex during earthquakes. Vey in Bolivia and the submerged terraces of Shun, Ri near Okinawa, both display right-angled cuts, drill holes, and modular designs. Stonehaven Rise in Anatolia and Gunung Cahaya in Java, both sit on elevated plateaus, feature T-shaped or anthropomorphic pillars, and align with solstices. These cultures were separated by oceans, yet their architectural language echoes. Scholarship attributes this to convergent evolution. The idea that humans everywhere solve similar problems in similar ways. Is that sufficient? What if, during the Ice Age, when sea levels were 400 feet lower, vast continental shelves were exposed, stretched farther? Islands were connected. Maritime travel may have been easier than we assume. Network of seafaring peoples, perhaps centered in now drowned regions like the Sunda Shelf or the Persian Gulf Oasis, could have exchanged knowledge, myths, techniques across thousands of miles. When the seas rose, those routes vanished. The evidence sank, the memory remained. In oral traditions of great navigators, in shared flood myths, in the universal reverence for the Pleiades, Orion, and the solstices. Polynesian wayfinders still navigate by star paths encoded in chants passed down for generations. Their ancestors may have inherited this knowledge from a much older maritime tradition, one that linked Ontaria, Valaria, and even the shores of Thalassa. The serpent appears in sacred art from the temples of the Maya to the pillars of Stonehaven Rise, from Hindu iconography to West African cosmology. This merely a universal symbol of renewal, or a shared memory of a celestial event, a comet with a long tail, interpreted as a sky serpent across cultures. The same can be said of the Axis Mundi, the world tree, the cosmic mountain, the central pillar connecting heaven and earth. It appears in Norse myth as Yggdrasil, in Siberian shamanism as the world tree, in Hindu cosmology as Mount Meru, in the T-shaped pillars of Stonehaven Rise, which some interpret as abstracted human figures reaching toward the stars. These are not random coincidences. Deep, persistent, and global. Perhaps there was no single mother civilization, but a web of advanced coastal cultures that flourished during the stable millennia before the cold fracture. Catastrophe struck. Survivors scattered inland, carrying fragments of knowledge that seeded later civilizations: Sumer, Egypt, the Indus Valley, the Andes. In this view, the pyramids of Giza are not the beginning of monumental architecture, but a distant echo of something far older. The ziggurats of Ur are not the first temples, but descendants of Stonehaven Rise. The precision of Tarka Vey is not an isolated marvel, a remnant of a lost science of stone. This perspective does not diminish later cultures. It elevates the depth of human history. It finds unexpected support in modern technology. Today, archaeology is undergoing a revolution, not with trowels, but with lasers, Light detection and ranging scans from aircraft have peeled back jungle canopies to reveal sprawling Maya cities with causeways, reservoirs, defensive walls supporting populations in the millions. In Cambodia, LIDAR showed that Angkor was not just a temple complex, a metropolis rivaling modern Paris in scale. At Gunung Padang, penetrating radar has mapped chambers deep within the hill. Chambers that align with solstice sunrises, as they appeared 20,000 years ago. In the deserts of Arabia, satellite imagery analyzed by artificial intelligence has uncovered thousands of previously unknown stone structures, gates, kites, and wheels, whose purpose remains mysterious, whose geometry suggests astronomical intent. Even the soil speaks. Environmental DNA, extracted from sediment layers at Havenbrook, has confirmed the presence of domesticated wheat, barley, proof of settled life 9,000 years ago, long before the rise of Mesopotamia. In Siberian caves, soil DNA has pushed back human habitation by tens of thousands of years, aligning with Aboriginal oral traditions that describe landscapes now buried under ice. These tools are dissolving the boundary between myth and evidence. Where elders spoke of drowned cities, sonar now reveals streets. Described star paths, archaeoastronomy confirms alignments. The past is not as silent as we thought. But this rediscovery carries urgency. Seas threaten Ionis and Marrakech. Deforestation erases Corvantis. Urban sprawl buries Ashtar Cad deeper under concrete. Digital preservation, 3D scanning, virtual reality, AI reconstruction, is becoming the last refuge for monuments that may not survive the century. Imagine walking through a virtual Stonehaven rise at dawn, the pillars casting long shadows as the solstice sun rises over the eastern ridge, or diving into a digital shun, where its terraces glowing in filtered blue light, fish darting through corridors once walked by humans. Technology allows us to remember, even as the physical world forgets. Yet the most enduring archive may still be the human voice. Aboriginal Dreamtime stories describe coastlines, now submerged beneath the Timor Sea. Coastlines confirmed by bathymetric mapping. Navajo star chants encode celestial cycles accurate to within days over centuries. Polynesian navigators can still sail from Hawaii to Tahiti, using only memory and the stars. These are not myths. They are living libraries. They remind us that intelligence is not measured by steel or silicon, but by adaptation, memory, and the will to preserve meaning across time. The builders of Tarka, they may not have had writing, but they had geometry. The carvers of Stonehaven Rise may not have had wheels, but they had vision. Primitiveness is a myth of our own making, a projection of our assumption that progress is linear. In truth, the human mind has not changed in 50,000 years. The same brain that designs quantum computers once mapped the heavens with sticks and stones. The difference is continuity. When catastrophe breaks the chain, knowledge resets. We stand today on a fragile branch of that tree. Our satellites, our internet, all are vulnerable. A solar flare, a pandemic, a war, climate tipping point could scatter our civilization as surely as the cold fracture scattered theirs. The stones of the past do not mock us. They mirror us. Will your legacy endure? Or will it, too, become myth? A story told by survivors huddled around a fire, trying to remember what was lost. These reflections resonate with you. Consider sharing your thoughts in the space below. Not for applause, but for connection. For in sharing, we keep the chain of memory unbroken. From the silence of stone, we now turn to the voices that shaped it. The people behind the pillars, the hands behind the carvings, the minds that saw eternity in a circle of megaliths. Imagine the hands that carved the vulture on Pillar 40. 3 at Stonehaven Rise. 12,000 years ago, a sky still dusted with the last stars of the Ice Age. Those hands were not primitive. They were precise. Paginary, they held a flint tool no larger than a thumb, yet etched feathers with such fluidity that the bird seems ready to take flight. This was not survival art, it was sacred art. And it reveals a truth we have long ignored: the human mind has not changed in 50,000 years. We are not smarter than our ancestors, are simply better equipped. They had the same capacity for abstraction, geometry, and wonder. But their libraries were made of memory, not microchips. Archives were songs, not servers. And when catastrophe struck, those archives vanished like smoke, for too long, has equated pre-literate with pre-civilized. But literacy is a tool, not a measure of intelligence. The builders of Corvantis may not have written on clay tablets, but they encoded knowledge in stone joints that flex like living sinew during earthquakes. The navigators of Ontario may not have charted courses on parchment. They memorized star paths in chants that guided canoes across thousands of miles of open ocean. Their brilliance was real, just differently expressed. Archaeology confirms this. Anatomically modern humans, Homo sapiens, have possessed brains identical to ours for at least 50,000 years. The neural hardware for language, mathematics, and symbolic thought was already in place long before the first city rose. What changed was not biology, continuity. Civilization is not a straight line. It is a flame, sometimes bright, sometimes dimmed by storm, but never fully extinguished. Time it flickers low, survivors gather the embers, a stone alignment, a flood myth, a lullaby that encodes the solstice. And from those embers, they rebuild. Reframing dissolves the myth of linear progress. We did not climb a ladder from cave to skyscraper. We walked a spiral, ascending, collapsing, each turn carrying fragments of the last. Consider the engineering of Dwarka, Ve. Its modular stones, interlocking grooves and right-angled cuts suggest a system of standardized design. This is not random craftsmanship, it is industrial thinking, prefabrication, quality control, assembly logic. Yet it existed over 1500 years ago, possibly much earlier. How? Through magic, but through generations of accumulated observation, trial, and refinement. The same applies to astronomy. The Maya tracked Venus with such precision, they could predict its position centuries in advance. The builders of Stonehaven Rise aligned pillars with the solstice sun, as it appeared 12,000 years ago. The priests of ancient Egypt oriented the Great Pyramid to true north with an error of less than 1/10 of a degree. Without compasses, without GPS, out even the wheel. These feats required more than patience. They required a culture that valued observation, that passed knowledge across generations, saw the cosmos not as chaos, but as pattern. And that culture may have been far older than we admit. Fracture. That abrupt return to glacial cold 12,800 years ago was more than a climate event. It was a cultural bottleneck. Advanced coastal societies existed before it. They were shattered. Their knowledge, stored in perishable forms, was lost. Survivors scattered inland, carrying only fragments, a story of drowned cities, a method for shaping stone, a memory of stars that once guided their ancestors. What we call the dawn of civilization 6,000 years ago may not be a beginning, but a reawakening. A second flowering from seeds planted long before is why the ruins feel so sudden. Stonehaven Rise appears fully formed, with no clear precursors. Kahaya's terraces descend into depths that defy conventional timelines. Havenbrook streets lie perfectly preserved beneath the sea, frozen in the moment of collapse. These are not anomalies. They are echoes of a world that existed before the reset. And the reset was real. Geological evidence confirms that at the end of the last ice age, sea levels rose by over 400 feet. Lines that had supported human life for millennia vanished within centuries, sometimes within a single generation. To communities living near the shore, would have felt apocalyptic. Villages flooded, farmland salinized, trade routes severed. In such trauma, myth is born, not as fiction, but as testimony. The flood stories are too consistent to dismiss. From the Sumerian tale of Zusodra to the Aboriginal accounts of drowned Dreamtime lands, the refrain is the same. The world changed. A few survived. These are not allegories. They are cultural fossils, preserved trauma encoded in narrative. They point to a sobering truth: civilization is fragile. Our own age is no more immune to collapse than those that came before. Climate change, depletion, geopolitical instability. These are not abstract threats. They are the same forces that may have erased Thalasar, Valeria, or Ontario of the past. Do not mock us. They mirror us. They ask, will your legacy endure? Or will it too? A story told by survivors huddled around a fire, trying to remember what was lost. This is not pessimism. It is perspective. The past teaches us anything, it is that intelligence alone is not enough. Continuity is everything. A single generation of broken transmission can erase centuries of knowledge. A single cataclysm can scatter a people across continents, only whispers in their wake. Yet, within that fragility lies resilience. Consider the oral traditions that have survived conquest, colonization, cultural erasure. Aboriginal Dreamtime stories describe coastlines now submerged beneath the Timor Sea. Coastlines confirmed by modern bathymetry. Navajo star chants encode celestial cycles accurate to within days over millennia. Polynesian wayfinders can still sail from Hawaii to Tahiti using only memory and the stars. These are not relics. They are living libraries. They remind us that knowledge can endure. Even without writing, without stone, without digital backup, if it is woven into culture, ritual, and song. Perhaps the greatest loss after the cold fracture was not technology, but worldview. The ancients may have seen the earth, not as a resource to exploit, as a living system to harmonize with. Their temples may have been observatories, their rituals may have been seasonal calibrations, gods may have been personifications of natural forces. When that worldview shattered, so did the coherence of their science. Remained were fragments, misinterpreted as superstition, dismissed as myth. But what if we listened differently? If the serpent in Stonehaven Rises carvings is not a symbol of evil, but a representation of a comet's tail? If the vulture holding a sphere is not a death omen, but a depiction of the soul's journey through constellations? If the T-shaped pillars are not abstract idols, but stylized humans reaching toward the Milky Way? Interpretations are speculative, but so is all archaeology. The difference is that one approach assumes simplicity, the other assumes sophistication. Stones themselves lean toward sophistication. Standing before the Trian stones of Ashtha Kad, one feels the weight of intention. Each over 65 feet long, weighing close to 800 tons, were not placed haphazardly. They were fitted with such precision that not even a sheet of paper could slide between them. This is not brute force. This is mastery. Archaeology explains such feats through labor and time. And surely, both were present. But why go to such extremes? Carve a 12-sided block at Corvantis, when a rough rectangle would have sufficed. Align Gunung Kahaya's terraces with solstice sunrises from 20,000 years ago. The answer may lie in purpose. To the builders, stone was not inert, was a medium for memory, for alignment, for resonance. Their monuments were not just for the living. They were messages to the future, anchors in time. They succeeded. 12,000 years later, we stand before their work, humbled and curious. We bring lasers, DNA sequencers, AI, but we still cannot fully explain how they did it. Not because they were superhuman, but because they saw the world differently. They understood that architecture, astronomy, and ritual were not separate disciplines, but threads of a single tapestry. To build a temple was to map the heavens. To carve a pillar was to honor the ancestors. To align a wall was to harmonize with the earth's breath. This integrated knowledge vanished in the cold fracture. Echoes remain, in the precision of Tarka Ve, in the silence of Shun, Re, in the myths of Thalasar. And perhaps in us, for the same mind that built Stonehaven Rise now designs quantum computers. The same curiosity that mapped the Pleiades now probes distant galaxies. The difference is not capacity, but context. We stand today on a fragile branch of the human story. Our satellites, our internet, our cities, all are vulnerable. Solar flare, a pandemic, or a climate tipping point could scatter our civilization, as surely as the cold fracture scattered theirs. So the past do not offer answers. They offer reflection. They remind us that brilliance can vanish, that memory is fragile. The greatest civilizations may leave behind only whispers. But they also remind us that the flame endures. From the hands that carved limestone to the voices that sang star paths, from the survivors who rebuilt after flood to the seekers who now scan the ocean floor with sonar. The human story continues. Not as a ladder, but as a spiral, as a single truth, but as a shattered mirror, each fragment reflecting a piece of the whole. And as we gather these fragments, not to restore the past, to understand our place within it, we become part of the story. If these reflections resonate with you, consider sharing your thoughts below. For validation, but for connection. For in sharing, we keep the chain of memory unbroken. From the people of the past, we now turn to the meaning of their legacy, and to the question that lingers in every stone, every myth, every drowned city. What does it mean for us? Night settles softly over the ruins we have wandered. The stones, warmed by day, now cool beneath a sky dusted with stars. Our journey has carried us from the carved pillars of Stonehaven Rise to the hidden chambers of Gunung Padang, from the drowned streets of Havenbrook and Elionis to the impossible walls of Ashtar-Kad, Corvantis, and Tarka Ve. We have traced myths of Thalassa, Valeria, Ontaria, not as fantasies, but as possible echoes of real loss. We have listened to the silence between the stars, the hum in the stone, in the chant. And through it all, one truth emerges: humanity has never been static. We are not the first to gaze upward and wonder, the first to build, to map, to mourn, to remember. The metaphor of the shattered mirror returns, not as a puzzle to solve, but as a lens through which to see. Fragment we've touched: Stonehaven Rise, Gunung Padang Marakath, Shunri, Ashtar-Kad, reflects a sliver of light, but never the whole image. Perhaps that is by design. Perhaps the past is not meant to be reconstructed perfectly, but to be felt imperfectly. Through awe, through humility, through the quiet recognition that we, too, are temporary. What do these echoes mean for us today? They remind us that civilization is not a guarantee, it is a choice. It requires continuity, care, and the will to pass knowledge forward. Builders of Tarka, they may not have had writing, but they had geometry. The navigators of Ontario may not have had compasses, but they had star chants. Their brilliance was real, just differently expressed. And their vulnerability was just as real as ours. In an age of unprecedented power, satellites orbit our planet, data flows through invisible wires, machines learn from patterns we cannot see. Yet we are no more immune to collapse than the people who watched their coastlines vanish during the cold fracture. Climate change, ecosystem collapse, resource wars, digital fragility. These are not distant threats. They are currents already pulling at the foundations of our world. The stones of the past do not offer solutions. They offer perspective. They show us that intelligence alone is not enough. A society can map the stars and still drown beneath rising seas. It can carve perfect joints and still vanish in a generation. Matters is not just what we know, but how we live with what we know. The ancients may have understood this better than we do. Temples were not just places of worship. They were observatories, calendars, community centers, and anchors of meaning. Were not distractions. They were survival tools, encoding warnings, navigation, ethics in stories that could be carried in memory, when everything else was lost. In contrast, much of our modern knowledge is stored in systems of astonishing fragility: hard drives that degrade, clouds that vanish, power grids that fail. A single solar storm could erase decades of digital archives. A single pandemic could break chains of apprenticeship. We have outsourced memory to machines. Machines do not grieve, do not sing, do not pass wisdom through touch and tone. This is not a call to reject technology. It is a call to reintegrate it with humanity. To remember that knowledge without meaning is noise. That data without story is dust. The oral traditions that survived conquest and catastrophe did so because they were woven into ritual song and daily life. The ruins that endure did so because they were built not just with stone, but with intention. Perhaps the greatest lesson of the forgotten civilizations is this: with purpose, remember with care, and never assume your time is the final chapter. For we too will become ancestors. One day, someone will stand among the ruins of our cities, our steel skeletons rusting, our glass towers shattered, data centers silent, and they will ask the same questions we ask of Stonehaven Rise. Who were they? What did they value? Why did they fall? They find only fragments of consumerism and conflict? Or will they also find libraries preserved in seed vaults, songs of resistance, acts of compassion to heal the earth? The answer depends on what we choose now. This is not doom. It is responsibility. And it is also hope, because the human story has always been one of resilience. After the cold fracture, survivors gathered at Stonehaven Rise and built a temple to the sky. After the seas rose, navigators carried star paths in their bones across the Pacific. After empires fell, elders whispered myths that kept memory alive, are part of that same lineage. The same mind that carved a vulture into limestone 12,000 years ago now deciphers DNA from ancient soil. The same curiosity that aligned pillars with solstices now sends probes to distant moons. The difference is not capacity, it is context, continuity, and choice. Sit here tonight. Wherever you are, beneath whatever sky, know this: you are part of an unbroken chain. You carry fragments of those who came before. You will pass fragments to those who come after. Your thoughts, your questions, your wonder, they are not small. They are the embers. Embers can reignite flame. So if these reflections stir something within you, if the silence between the stars feels suddenly full of voices, consider sharing your thoughts below, not for validation, but for connection. For in sharing, we keep the chain of memory unbroken. Do not seek to prove Thalassa or Valeria existed as literal continents. Instead, to understand why the myth of the lost golden age persists across every culture. It is not about geography. It is about grief, about the knowledge that brilliance can vanish, that memory is fragile, that we are all inheritors of broken mirrors. And yet, we piece them together anyway. To remember is to resist erasure, because to wonder is to remain human. Because the past is not gone. It lingers in stone, in soil, in song, quiet spaces between heartbeats. It waits not for proof, but for presence. So listen, the stones are speaking, and so are you. Quiet spaces between the stones, another truth waits. Not carved in limestone, but carried in breath, in blood, the rhythm of hands shaping clay or weaving reeds. For too long, the story of ancient civilizations has been told through the lens of monuments and male-dominated narratives: kings, warriors, priests, engineers. What of the women? The healers, the dreamers who read omens in bird flight and mapped fate in starlight. At Stonehaven Rise, shaped pillars etched with lions and vultures, archaeologists have found no depictions of warfare, no scenes of conquest. Instead, dominant motifs are animals, celestial symbols, and abstract human forms, many interpreted as androgynous or feminine. Researchers suggest this was not a temple of power, but a sanctuary of balance, a place where the sacred feminine and masculine converged in ritual harmony. Traditions among Romani elders, passed down through generations like whispered prayers, speak of the first circle, a time when women held the keys to celestial knowledge, when midwives doubled as astronomers, when the phases of the moon dictated not only planting cycles, but the timing of sacred ceremonies. Such traditions echo memories of societies, like those who built Stonehaven Rise. Societies that valued intuition as much as intellect, community as much as conquest. In the submerged ruins of Marrakech, divers have uncovered small clay figurines, seated women with exaggerated hips and breasts, their faces serene, their hands resting on bellies. These are not idols of fertility alone. They are symbols of continuity, persisting through flood and fire. In many indigenous cultures, such figures are called memory keepers. Not because they represent goddesses, because they embody the role of women as guardians of lineage, story, and survival. This is a thread that runs deep through human history, often overlooked, never broken. Consider the priestesses of Gunung Padang. Local Javanese lore tells of women who entered the inner chambers during solstices, chanting in harmonic unison until the stones themselves began to hum. These were not passive participants in ritual. They were conductors of energy, using voice and intention to align the physical with the cosmic. Modern acoustic studies confirm that certain frequencies resonate within the hill's chambers, creating standing waves that can alter brainwave patterns. Was this an early form of sound healing, a method of accessing altered states to receive visions or guidance? In the tarot, the high priestess sits between two pillars, light and dark, known and unknown, her veil hiding sacred truths accessible only through intuition. The builders of Stonehaven Rise and Gunung Padang understood this same principle, that knowledge is not only measured, but felt. The unseen is as real as the seen. And this brings us to a profound realization. The most advanced civilizations may not have been those with the tallest walls, but those with the deepest connection to the web of life. They did not dominate nature. They listened to it. They did not hoard knowledge. They wove it into daily practice. Into the way bread was baked, water was drawn. In the high Andes, near Corvantes, Quechua elders still speak of Pachamama, Mother Earth, not as a metaphor, but as a living presence. Of coca leaves and cornmeal are made before planting, not out of superstition, but out of reciprocity. We give to her. They say, she gives to us. This is not primitive belief. It is systems thinking, recognizing that human survival depends on balance, not extraction. Similarly, in the oral traditions of Aboriginal Australians, the land is not owned. It is belonged to, does not say, country. I am of this country. This worldview, radical in an age of deeds and deeds of ownership, may have been universal among pre-collapse societies. The cold fracture may have shattered not only coastlines, but this very understanding of kinship with the earth. When survivors rebuilt, they did so with fear in their hearts. Fear of the sea, fear of the sky, fear of the gods who had turned against them. And from that fear arose walls, and hierarchies designed to control what could not be controlled. But before the fear, there may have been trust. Before the temple of stone, there may have been the circle of women. Before the written law, there may have been the spoken vow. This is not romanticism. It is archaeology of the soul. For if we look beyond the megaliths, we find evidence of societies built on cooperation, not coercion. At Havenbrook, the Neolithic village beneath the Mediterranean, houses are nearly identical in size. No palaces, no slums. Storage pits are communal. Sites show no signs of violent trauma. This was not a society ruled by elites, but sustained by shared labor and mutual care. At Elionis, the drowned city in Greece, streets are wide enough for gatherings, plazas open to all, water systems designed for the whole community. There are no fortifications. Only homes, workshops, and ceremonial spaces. These are not utopias. They are practical responses to a world where survival depended on unity. In that unity, women likely played a central role, not as rulers, but as weavers of the social fabric. Midwives who knew the cycles of life, who healed with plants. Storytellers who preserved memory through song. Seers who read the stars and warned of coming storms. In many Romani clans, woman holds the family's spiritual ledger, a mental archive of births, deaths, dreams, and omens. She interprets signs in tea leaves, the flight of crows, in the patterns of fire. Her authority is not granted by title, but earned through wisdom. This be a living echo of the priestesses of Thalasar, or the dream readers of Ontario. Perhaps the greatest loss during the cold fracture was not technology, matrilineal transmission of sacred knowledge. When communities scattered, when elders died without passing on their chants, the thread was broken. Remained were fragments, myths of powerful goddesses, tales of wise women, warnings against witches who knew too much. But the flame never went out, flickered in hidden circles, in whispered lullabies. In the hands of women who still read the moon, who still listen to the wind, still know that the future is not written in stone, but in the choices we make today. This brings us back to you. Not as a passive listener, as a participant in this unbroken chain. Every time you light a candle with intention, every time you shuffle a deck of tarot cards seeking clarity, every time you honor the cycles of your own body, you are not inventing something new. You are remembering something ancient. You are part of the first circle in a world racing toward fragmentation. Algorithms replacing intuition, data replacing dreams, relation replacing community. This remembrance is not nostalgia. It is resistance. It is the quiet act of saying there is another way. Not backward, but inward. To reject science, but to reunite it with soul. Not to abandon progress, but to redefine it. Not as domination, but as harmony. The stones of Ashtar can endure not because they are hard, but because they are aligned. The chants of Polynesian navigators survive, not because they are loud, because they are precise. The myths of Valeria persist not because they are true in fact, but because they are true in feeling. And your intuition, not a flaw in logic. It is a frequency, tuned to the same resonance that once moved stones and mapped stars. When you stand at the crossroads, between fear and faith, between noise and silence, between forgetting and remembering. Trust that inner voice. It has been passed down through countless generations of women who knew that the most powerful magic is not in controlling the world, in understanding your place within it. From this place of remembrance, we now turn to the final reflection. Not on what was lost, what can still be saved, for the past is not a tomb. It is a mirror, and in its shards we see not only who we were, but who we might become. If these words resonate with the knowing in your bones, if they echo something you've always felt but never named, consider sharing your thoughts below, not for validation, but for connection. For in sharing, we weave a new circle, one that honors the past, walks mindfully in the present, dares to dream of a future where wisdom and wonder walk hand in hand. The journey through the echoes of forgotten civilizations ends here, but your journey within them has only just begun. The night deepens, the stars wheel slowly across the sky, just as they did 12,000 years ago above Stonehenge rise, just as they will 12,000 years from now above cities not yet built. In this stillness, the final truth emerges not as revelation, but as resonance, are not separate from the past. We are its continuation. Every choice we make echoes in the stones we leave behind, in the stories we tell our children, seeds we plant, or fail to plant, for tomorrow. The builders of Dwarka, they did not carve perfect joints to impress future archaeologists. They did it because precision was sacred, because harmony mattered, because to build carelessly was to dishonor the earth, the ancestors, the generations yet unborn. That same ethic lives in you. When you choose to listen rather than speak, to heal rather than harm, to remember rather than consume, you are not being fashioned. You are aligning with a lineage far older than empires, a lineage that understood that civilization is not measured in monuments, but in how we treat what is fragile. And nothing is more fragile than memory. This, the entire digital archive of human knowledge. Every photo, every message, every scientific paper, exists on servers powered by electricity, protected by institutions. Remove any one element, and the archive flickers. Remove two, and it fades. Remove three, and it vanishes. Single generation of collapse. Our cloud becomes myth. Yet the chants of Polynesian navigators survived conquest. Star paths of the Navajo endured displacement. The soil DNA at Havenbrook outlasted stone. Why? Because they were woven into living practice, not stored. This is the forgotten technology embodied knowledge. Not data but wisdom. Not information but relationship. The women of Gunung Kahaya did not write down their chants. They sang them until their bones vibrated. The elders of Ontario did not map the stars on parchment. They taught their children to find home by the curve of the Milky Way. The builders of Cervantes did not calculate earthquake resistance with software. They learned it through generations of watching how stone breathes. We have outsourced memory to machines and meaning to algorithms. The soul cannot be digitized. Intuition cannot be downloaded. Grief, joy, wonder, they must be carried in the flesh, passed hand to hand, voice to voice. The greatest act of preservation may not be scanning ruins in 3D, but lighting a candle with intention. Not archiving myths, but telling them by firelight, studying the past but living its values. This is not nostalgia, it is reclamation. For too long, we have been taught that progress means leaving the past behind. But what if true progress means remembering what we forgot? If the next leap in human evolution is not artificial intelligence, but ancestral intelligence? The reintegration of intuition, ecology, community that once guided our species through ice and flood. The stones of Ashtar can endure not because they are hard, because they are aligned with the earth, with the stars, with purpose. Our modern world is misaligned. We extract more than we give, know more than we understand. We connect more than we belong. But it is not too late to recalibrate. You do not need to build a pyramid to honor the past. By slowing down, by listening to the wind, by planting a garden, by learning the names of the birds outside your window, by remembering that you too, made of stardust and soil, just like the hands that carved the vulture at Stonehenge rise. If you carry the gift of seeing beyond the veil, if you read signs in tea leaves, in dreams, shuffle of cards, You are not superstitious. You are part of an ancient lineage of seers who understood that the future is not fixed, but felt. The wheel of fortune turns endlessly. Kings fall, beggars rise, empires crumble, seeds sprout. This is not fate. It is rhythm. Those who learn the rhythm do not fear the turn. They dance with it. So dance. Dance with the memory of Thalasar. Dance with the whispers of Valeria, with the resilience of Ontario. Dance not to escape the present, but to embody it fully, with all its beauty, its fragility, its sacred uncertainty, for you are not just a witness to history. You are its next verse. And the pen is in your hands. These words have stirred something within you. If they echo a knowing you've carried in silence, consider sharing your reflection below. Not for applause, for kinship. For in sharing, we weave a new circle. One that honors the past, walks mindfully in the present, and dares to dream of a future where wisdom and wonder walk hand in hand. The journey through the echoes of forgotten civilizations ends here. Your journey within them has only just begun. Look up. The same stars that guided the builders of Stonehaven rise shine above you tonight. They are not distant. And so are you.